Hey folks, how's it going? RedMaster, and welcome back to episode of Cards and Castles 2. We're back with another hidden combos deck list for you, and you know, it kind of feels right that we've been doing a lot of these deck list videos here for the game. I know people usually would want to see some more guides, some more breakdowns for factions and deck building and all that, and you know, I will admit that they're not my strongest form of content, at least personally for me, but I am still working on trying to piece something together. The problem is, of course, that the game is always undergoing some revamps and some changes as we are in a very early access stage of the game. And you know, even as I record this today, we're set for another patch here very soon. When exactly, we're not sure, but we know one is coming. So of course that's going to probably throw off what might be good and what might not be as a, you know, new player guide on what you should look towards and all that. So again, kind of letting things boil in the background. We put the stew on the pot, gotta let it go, you know. So in the meantime, why not showcase more lists? And I'm showcasing this one because right now I've been having a lot of fun with it. It's one of the more unique builds that you can pull off with the given cards, which I think is always fun, but one that I don't think will get affected too much by the incoming balance changes, or what we assume is a, you know, balance patch. We obviously are looking at a few cards that are going to be certainly probably on the chopping block, but I think this one might for the most part be avoided, maybe some here and there, but overall, you know, I think it's something that you can maybe look to take with you and even get into some practice now before the patch change occurs, so that way you get a little bit more familiar with it. But anyways, enough of the stalling here, as we got a deck list to cover and some games to showcase. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at our deck list for today, the Acco Spawner deck. Alright, and here we have it, the Acco Spawner list. Now, as the name entails, our star here is going to be the Acolyte, a card that you don't really see too much just based on its wonky ability. It's got a Last Will effect to summon a random unit with cost equal to this unit's attack. So the idea behind it is that you are, of course, you should be increasing the power of Acolyte, and then thereby when the Acolyte falls, you get to summon bigger creatures, whether that be in the 5-6 gold range, depending on what you have in the deck to support that. And in this deck in particular, we are looking in that 5 gold slot. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Red, how do we get there? How do we, you know, ensure that we can pull off, you know, 5 gold unit summons off of Acolyte? Now, of course, before we move forward here, let me just give you a quick preview of the units we're working with for 5 gold. Things like Dragon Knight, Earth Knight, Grendel, Bear, Ranger, War Elephant. A lot of heavy hitters in the 5 gold slot. They're definitely worth peeking from the Acolyte. But again, the question is, Red, how do we get there? What do we do that we can ensure that Acolyte is, you know, 5 attack by the time we get him out? Well, the deck has a very sort of two-part system. One, of course, is the Acolyte and attack buffing and some Last Will support, which we'll get into in a minute. But the other part is a is a nice little dwarven search engine that I found works really well in this particular build. Things like Dwarven Construction on the turn 1 can pull us into a dwarf, that being either the Deadeye or the Miner. We want to aim for the Dwarven Miner, because Miner's got an ability here that whenever damage is dealt, whether he's attacking or being attacked, you can draw an item card from your deck. And what so happens to be an item in these colors? Veil of the Assassin, an item that gives a unit +2 attack power. Throwing these both onto an Acolyte that spawns, you now have a 5 attack Acolyte that can, of course, move around, do some damage, and follow up with a bigger boy on defeat, on the defeat of the Acolyte. So this is pretty much the heart of the combo. Very early game, tutoring, searching out your combo through the dwarven pieces, and then of course just generating a big Acolyte. But we mentioned that this is more of a spawner list, right? So the question then becomes, well, Red, how do we bring forth multiple units here from the Acolyte? How do we get multiple 5 gold summons? And that's where one of our more underused cards, Obnoxious Parrot, comes into play. Now, Parrot's got a cool little ability here that he gets to repeat your most recent Last Will effect when the parrot is summoned, meaning you can of course then summon the Acolyte spawn unit, and of course being random, it could be another completely random 5 gold unit for you to use on the board. Now, of course, this is also important because what most people maybe not realize about Last Will is that the Last Will spawns actually trigger on the spot of death for the unit, i.e. if I move Acolyte up 2 spaces from its spawn point, the unit, and then he happens to die there, the unit I summon from Parrot will be at the exact same spot. So it's able to keep up some nice little castle aggression too, if you manage to get your Acolyte in closer for some more damage, which I think is a very, very cool way to kind of just pressure your opponent with big spawn creatures that are sitting right there on their face. So that is, of course, the heart of the combo. We also have Armory in here as a nice little aside from the Dwarven Tutoring. If you manage to get one of these out before your Dwarf Engine kicks on, you can also have the ability to pull various other items which can increase the Acolyte's attack further. That, of course, can be used to generate 6-7 gold units, which again gives even more power to your Acolyte spawns. Sometimes you're not always lucky with the Armory, and sometimes Armory gets drawn in late, but the thing that we can save Armory for, of course, is Smuggling Ring. We can discard it, add 3 Contraband, and now we have a whole brand new set of toys to play with. And speaking of Contraband, rounding out this deck list with the Acolyte, Last Will, and Dwarven Tutor stuff is a nice healthy Contraband package for you to support the rest of your game when your plan does go south with Last Will, when they've managed to kill off your Acolyte spawns and push past your Parrot. The Contraband that you can generate in the early game and throughout the entirety of the game is sometimes enough to actually keep you in the game despite your big mainstay combo being out. It's a bit of a recovery, if you will. And of course, that recovery can also be put into Vilaroth as sort of a big end game threat, which actually more than often can sometimes be game winning on his own, depending on what you find first, Vilaroth or your Acolyte Parrot combo. Big boy can gain a lot of stats from Contraband generated throughout the game, and of course all of that combined can set him in as a brutal attacker, depending on what you actually pull from your Contraband here. There is, of course, random effects per faction, things like Berserk for Druids, Chain Lightning for Vikings, etc., which you can read. We can read up on in the Discord. We've actually mapped out all of the abilities that Vilaroth can gain. And with that being said, that is kind of the heart of the deck. Let's go ahead and break it down card by card as well. Just give you a quick rundown on some of the other cards that we have mentioned or that are in here. So Veil the Assassin, we know, is the Acolyte buffer. Constructions are early part of the Dwarven Tutor package. Imp is just a very good 1-drop. It can bring you a 2-cost spell to your hand and give you something to play on turn 2 guaranteed. And he's just a funny little guy. I think probably most Warlock decks are running Imp. If they're not, they need to get Mischievous Imp into their decks ASAP. Mugging for some extra Contraband gain and some, out-of-hand damage, which could be useful for backline targets, things like snipers, mages, frog princes, etc. Acolyte started the show, no need to explain him further. Armory for some additional item pulls. Smuggling Ring as the first series of, the second series of Contraband in the deck list, but one of the mainstays for Contraband. Discard a card, add 3 Contraband, 3 brand new cards, could be anything. Deadeye is in here as one of the dwarves for the combo here. I feel like having just more than the Dwarven Miner might be useful in the deck, and Deadeye is a hell of a card. It's a funny little sniper, so you can sit in the back, snipe things away, snipe away the peasants, if you will, and also can deal 1 damage on summon, which in the early game, very crucial to get rid of some early nuisances and pests. Parrot to obviously re-trigger your Acolyte, Last Will, or other Last Will cards you have. There are, I think, 2 more Last Wills that we can potentially save Parrot for if we end up, not finding Acolyte. Spitefish as the other big Contraband focus card. This dude, ever he gets hit, had contraband, so you're going to be generating a lot of cards with more combat when he's involved. Dwarven Miner for the item tutoring. You want this card to pull in your bales, or so, and you can pull him off of the construction. So just an overall essential tutoring piece. Mana Core as our Guardian, another Last Will card we can use Parrot for. I just kind of needed a Guardian in this deck, and I felt like Mana Core was a good card to do so. In hindsight, Earth Knight could be another great inclusion here. I mean, it's on curve here. You don't have to contend with Miner, but Mana Core's Last Will also does give an extra bit of value to Parrot, so take that as you will. I think those two are very interchangeable. Dread Pirate in here to further the quote contraband. I mean, this card just kind of seals from your opponent, but it's still a valid threat here. If you don't have Robins, that's okay. Maybe experiment with the Earth Knight in this slot if you got it, but I just figured that more contraband couldn't hurt, especially for our Vilaroth. Friendly Giant as our other Last Will card aside from Mana Core and Acolyte. Summoning 2 small friends could be very useful, and having that repeat if necessary, also a nice little plus there. Usually I think you're looking at between 1 to 3 gold units for this. I know the small friends portion is very vague and ambiguous, but I think that really just relates to 3 gold or less units, which are a wild pool for sure. There are a lot of things you can pull from there, so I figured Giant might be one of the better Last Will inclusions out of these colors to add as an additional target. Following that, you've got Dragon's Fire, probably the more controversial card I have in this deck. I figured that right now Dragon's Fire is okay, but Man the Cannon could do you a lot better. These cards, obviously, though, very interchangeable. I guess it really depends on what kind of matchups you're seeing and what kind of meta you might be in at the time. Man the Cannons for more swarm stuff, and Dragon's Fire if you feel like there's just these really big chonkers that are kind of sitting in your way and you deal with them fast. Both, I think, are valid, and I feel like right now maybe Man the Cannon is a bit stronger than Dragon's Fire, but I also ran Dragon's Fire and had similar success, so either or works, really, I think. And then, of course, rounding out the list, we've got Vilaroth, the payoff for your contraband package in case all things go south, or your alternate wing con. So, always good to have a nice little extra chonker sitting in the wings here when things go south. And with that being said, that is our Acco Spawner list in full. Let's go ahead and take it to the battlefield to see what kind of action it can get into. Alright, our first match will be me taking on Tyrant King, a bit of a similar color matchup here, both rocking the green-red. And by the way, I've decided to kind of switch back to my commentary format where we have the extra media support from my computer rather than just doing the replay system in-game outright. I feel like right now the replay system is good, but lacks a bit more control over your replays, so I can't pause it for moments that I won't want to explain further. So we're kind of back to this little setup here. Hope you don't mind, but let's go ahead and jump right into the matchup here. And starting things off here, I do realize that Vilaroth is a bit too expensive, so we'll pick up a great starting hand here, Mugging, Acolyte, and the Imp. Starting off turn 1, gotta go with the Imp to test the waters here, see what we can pull. Managed to pull a backdraft. I think it was the 2 fire traps that they gave me an option for backdraft or the rune. So I figured why not go backdraft, set him up for a potential unit dying turn, his first unit dying turn 2, turn 3. And meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and chip in with the Imp. He pulls the Witch's Hut, which gets him a couple of spells here, but I catch the Acolyte with the backdraft. Very nice. Going to pop that early. He yields a baby dino, which is a little problematic for that Raptor spawn, but, you know, no big deal. We'll avoid it for now. It can't attack us, so we'll go with the Imp, moving him up and popping him for 1 more in the face. Go for Wizard, which, by the way, Wizard, great spell tutor. I think a lot more decks that rely on spells are going to be running that. I'm going to go for the Metal into Mugging. Takes out my Peasant in the back. I'm going to go ahead and Mugging in response here to heal off the Wizard with the help of Deadeye. Normally, I would like to save the Deadeye for an Armory, but I figured that's just some good value that we can establish, and having the Deadeye on board could be very nice. Goes for the Spitefish in turn 4, which is a very scary play here. we don't really have a lot of power to be dealing with Spitefish effectively. He's going to get a lot of potential contraband from this, so I got to be careful. Move Imp down and pop some more damage into his face, putting him at 19. We're going to go for, or he goes for the Salahar Spitefish interaction here. We're going to lose our Imp. He'll Curse of Death, the Acolyte in this case, which is a bit of a shame. I won't know until we actually play said Acolyte. But in the meantime, Pterodactyl destroys my Deadeye potential, and he throws out the Bandit, which I think is a great target for the Dwarven Miner. And of course, right there you see the tutoring action happening. We are pulling in the Veils very early, getting them out of the deck so we don't have to draw them, but we have them in hand for later. Second Veil drawn by the interaction of Bandit and the Miner, which is fantastic. There was a Chaotic Mage into the mix here, which I thought was very interesting. Chaotic Mage, a very dangerous unit, but you do have to figure how to play it correctly. Going for the Miner Salahar interaction here, I figured this is the best bet to kind of turn off the Spitefish threat as best as we can, and we'll use the Friendly Giant to pop away the Raptor. Acolyte gets spawned, but then dies thanks to the Curse of Death here. We do get the Wraith, which is neat, but it is what it is. He'll go with the Frost Giant in response here, thankfully bouncing the Deadeye with the Chaotic Mage. Again, the downside of playing this card, you do get to maybe give your unit some more beneficial effects here. So, of course, Deadeye returning to my hand, shooting the Chaotic Mage here with the double Deadeye spawn, and thanks to the armor, we get a bit more assistance, like the Spear of Odin and the Essence, which we can use to force a discard. Now, the Spear of Odin is a great example of why we do run Armory, giving your Acolyte more potential targets for gaining attack power. And of course, that can lead to bigger and bigger spawns from your Acolyte. Meanwhile here, there's a couple of ways to try and clear the board here. Pterodactyl, throwing some other cards in the mix there, killing off my Friendly Giant, which is the Frost Titan. And then meanwhile here, I'm just going to try and destroy a bit of his back line, as well as deal as much damage as I can to face here. Everything was going to get pulled back with the Kraken, so I figured let's just set up a big line to defend myself. And it goes off here, the Kraken gets spawned, we get yoinked in. A bit of a weird, messy pull there, but I think it still works. Go for the Brynjolf, which again probably has to be another contraband pull, and of course interact with my Bard, I believe that was? Yeah, Bard. And of course, now we're just on cleanup duty. You see there, taking the Kraken, taking out the Peasant, mugging here to draw a couple of cards here. I end up actually using the Veils in this moment to facilitate better trades. It was unfortunate, but given the circumstances we were in, I wanted to press a little bit of advantage that we had in this matchup, because now once we clear the board here, we can still keep units and also push some more. The Wraith goes in for the extra damage. We summon the Friendly Giant for turn and pass. We do still have the Parrot in hand, so that Parrot can actually produce Last Will Friendly Giant units at this point. So we want to maybe get the Giant to move in or get burned off at this point, so that way we can maybe spawn more off that Parrot. Strange Magician into Final Flash. He's going to get a lot of little spell value here. Battle Cry at 0, spawning the Magic Eater. Strength of Will on the Mage Apprentice, but I think right now the deck is not doing super well for him. I'm going to go ahead and shoot the Magic Eater, and I realized here this is a bit of a mistake. I forgot that my Vileroth had Chain Lightning, where I easily could have just popped the Mage Apprentice and the damage would have transferred to the Eater, meaning that we could have actually just forced the Friendly Giant into face. A bit of a just forgetful moment on my part, but still we're doing the job all the same. Peasant going into face, Wraith going into face here, some great cleanup from us, and of course we go for the Dwarven Miner, picking up that Dwarven Weapons, which is fantastic. Essence of Hatred, discarding another hand from Tyrant. Not exactly too well for him. Goes for the Rat King into the Burnout. So at this point, it was nervous that we run into a Dragon's Fire, but we see Living Vines. And at that point, that's going to do it for us in this matchup here. Smuggling Ring the Parrot away, just kind of see if we get extra damage, which we can't. Do pull Screams, though, which is very funny. Screams is certainly a dangerous card, and in this matchup here, I didn't check the damage, but we could have seen some big power off of that. And of course, everything else moving in here. Deadeye finishing the job from afar, and that, of course, takes our first game. Overall, we didn't get to see the Acolyte combo in this game, but that matchup really just goes to show what the game plan is and kind of how things play out. A little bit of a preview of that Dwarven engine that we mentioned early on, and overall just solid contraband pulls as well. We saw how useful the Vilaroth was in taking out big threats, and that's kind of why he's in here as well. He does just big damage, and that could be enough to save your ass when you need it to. But game number 1, of course, in the books. Let's go ahead and check out game number 2 and see what that one's got for us. All right, game number 2 is me taking on our old pal here, Tweakin. I believe Tweakin goes for the Viking pirate deck in this matchup here, so a bit different than the Mirror of Green-Red, which is fine by me. We'll start off turn 1 with that Dwarven Construction early. We pull out the Library, which in hindsight is a very good card for this deck. Contraband can usually lead your hand to be quite full, so the Library extending your hand size actually does a nice bit of work there to help you keep some cards, not forcing discards to happen. We do go with the Imp turn 2 here in response to the Flying Books by Tweakin, which he coined out, so that was a bit of a bold play. Into the Snowy Owl, which could have gotten some value if he had kept the Imp on board first, but again, I think this was more of a point where Tweakin was still kind of learning some ropes, I believe. So he's making a couple of misplays, but that's alright. Going for the Salahar Soldier for some draw. Going for the Mugging in response, we're going to go ahead and slap the Owl with the Salahar Spitefish, getting a bit more contraband for our hand here. And of course, there you see the hand starting to fill up a little bit, which is why I'm thankful for that Library in the back. Goes for the Skeletal Pirate, but we're going to go ahead and Troll Toll, but I think he has enough to pay Troll Toll, so we don't actually manage to get an additional body on the board, which is fine. We'll go for the Armory Dwarven Miner in response here, pulling out the Dwarven Weapons, another great card to increase the power of Acolyte. He'll go for the Salahar Soldier, finishing the Spitefish into the Hassan Legionnaire for some draw, which bit of a problem, I will admit, but we're going to go for the Dragon Knight here. Dwarven Miner cleans up the Hassan Legionnaire. We'll give him the draw because we do want the Veils to come out of the deck. We don't want them sitting in there, so damage, even if it's non-favorable, it's going towards our big combos. We want that. We'll go for Manicore in response into the Flying Books here. And now I actually remember this was Tweakin's draw deck, but I did want to show this game because it did. You'll understand why in a minute. We're going ahead here. Dragons firing away the Manicore, popping into the Pirate. Pirate Last Will, going to get him a card, I believe. I think he did have a target for it. Into the Minotaur, turn 8 here. Big boy comes in, smacks my Dragon Knight for 7, kills it, draws a card. Back to me. We're going to go ahead and go for the Stone Drake, removing the bit of Minotaur health and causing that handful there you see, forcing him to discard. Going for another Manicore of our own and passing it back here. Deadeye doing the last bit of damage to remove the Minotaur. Go for another Manicore of his own into the Wizard here, so tutoring out another spell, which I thought was, fine. Do have another Storm, well, we do have another Armory, which you could play. I go for it, as you see there. Storm Weapon plus the Deadeye, removing the Wizard from play. Another Miner comes in, do get some more items to use. Essence of Hatred, forcing a discard. And Manicore kind of just moving to protect the Hovel. We go for a big Kraken here, which is interesting. Kraken certainly, I guess, was a favorite on this day, I think. And I'm not too concerned. We do have the Omaiwa for it. Gonna go for the Miner, taking out the bird up top. I forget what bird it was. I think it was the Hawk. I might be wrong. But anyways, Kraken pulling, of course, gonna go ahead and direct everything close to us. Another Brainwolf, similar to how we saw Tyrant King in game 1, but this time Freya to reinforce that board. Very, very scary Berserk Kraken is. Although, unfortunately for him, Kraken kind of just hits my Dwarven Sharpshooter, my Deadeye, if you will. We're going to go ahead and Omaiwa the big Kraken and start clearing the board here, as you can see. Bone Drake plus Peasant killing off the Brynjolf. He'll use the Manicore and the Miner to trade there. Storm Weapon popping the rest of the Brynjolf. And here's our big combo, baby. Acolyte into the Veil, into the Veil, into the Dwarven Weapon. So in this case, one of the instances where we do have 6 attack for our Acolytes. The pool is slightly varied than the one I showed you at the deck building section. So at this point, he kind of sees the Acolyte, figures, you know what, I can take it out. Goes for the Great White, Peasant Cleanup, Frost Blast, our new Ronin, which of course, 7-8, big body. And the Freya as well, to get some extra damage in. Wizard for some more tutoring. And he thinks he's safe. He thinks he's safe, but unfortunately not. Parrot into Parrot, going to yield some more huge bodies. Funny that Friendly Giant is among the pool here, but Frost Giant, Friendly Giant, Ronin, all scary things to be faced with at once. Fortunately, Tweakin does have the Yarm Lightning here, so a bit of board cleanup, but it does not mean my units die yet. He's forced to expend that extra Dagger Storm to just remove the board entirely. And now, while it's a shame that he did have the answers for my specific swarm here, not a lot of decks, I think, are able to handle that level of swarm when it comes to huge units. Things like the Giants. We saw Ronan there as a 7-8 for a moment. Very scary stuff if your opponent doesn't have any sort of big unit slash swarm answers, kind of having like both needing to combine into one there. So that is essentially the combo that we're trying to pull off here, and I think in this game it worked out very well for us, as now we can pull off the Craxus, which we did pull from Tweakin's Depot. Minotaur comes back out, dealing with our Stone Drake, Skeletal Pirate, just trying to get some defense is Tweakin, but at this point it's going to be very hard to do that. Dwarven Construction getting us a Furnace. We do pull the Blacksmith, which I think, honestly, the Blacksmith here was my mistake a little bit. Should have gone for the Deadeye first to generate the items that then could have been duped under the Blacksmith. That's kind of just a order thing. That's something that I didn't think about because I just wanted the cards in hand. I kind of wanted to see my options for removing the Minotaur. And the Sphere of Odin was a great way to do so. The additional damage that we got from that spear allowed us to kind of clear the Minotaur while also keeping the presence of Craxus alive and well. At this point, Tweakin's out of cards, which is a bit of a shame. And yeah, things fall apart very quickly. Only 4 cards in hand. One's Craxus, but that's not bad. Unfortunately, this is where we, I think, close out the game. Soul Steel comes into play. We're going to go ahead and give our Craxus that additional stat line. Shadow Katana as well, moving to the back. The Raptor hits into face. Storm Weapon, the last bit there to kill off his castle. So, a very nice display there, and pretty much showcasing the combo in its full. It's what we want to do with it. We want to, of course, make the Acolyte as huge as possible, send it in, and, of course, be able to spawn multiple copies of big units. So, that is the dream. That is the ideal scenario. And yeah, I think that was just a great demonstration of what it could do. I think maybe Tweakin could have run something a bit better than all draw to get out his combo that he was testing. But I figured it was still worth to show what this combo can actually do and what you're actually looking for to all bring it together. So with that being said, let's see what our final matchup, match number 3, has for us. All right. In game number 3, she's another mirror-esque color matchup here as Warlock Pirates from Shaft takes on our build here. Now, of course, this is going to show a lot of the contraband side, how it could be used as our backup in what can be brutal mirror matchups. And we're going to go ahead and start out with the Witch's Hut on Shaft side, getting a couple of spells here. We go for the early Armory, a bit of a weirder spot, but I figured, hey, it's Armory. We'll hopefully maybe pull out some dwarves here soon to get this ball rolling. Goes for the early Furnace Knight turn 3, which is a bit of a problem here. We're actually forced to use a Salahar, which will die cleanly to the Furnace Knight. He uses Subterfuge, which I think was probably one of the contraband cards that he pulled there. I'm already seeing a lot of cards from neither of these factions because, of course, that's just the nature of contraband. And forced to kind of do the mugging here, trying to find anything that can maybe even out the board state. Thankfully, we had 2 muggings. Muggings both clear out the Furnace Knight and the Wolf to block the incoming Peasant. Unfortunately, the Wolf has no target in deck, so we do have to kind of just pass up on that draw. But in the meantime, Wolf going to go ahead, chomp out the Peasant. Dread Pirate in hand, going to go ahead and intercept the Privateer. Privateer comes in, slashes up our Wolf, though. It is a bit of a weaker Wolf, so he sees that as easy prey. And he goes for his own Dread Pirate. At this point, I figure the Veil is the best play that we have to disrupt his own Dread Pirate shenanigans here. Flame Prince go ahead and gets us a copy of Blaze thanks to the Dragon's Fire. Dagger Storm hits the board now, clearing, unfortunately, our Dread Pirate, so that way we don't have to interact. He doesn't have to interact with it. Chaotic Storm missing both unit kills there, leaving each at 1 apiece, which I think is fine. Go with the Flame Prince on face because I feel like there's more options to deal with the Privateer. We go for the Mortar, but we don't get it, unfortunately. The Miner are going to have to be the intercepting tool for that privateer. Daggerstorm Part 2 comes in, cleans up the board well for him, but gets us our second copy of Veil, so we're not too upset about that. Goes for another Flame Knight and passes back to us. Unfortunately, we do draw another Salahar, so Salahar will be taking the brunt again for this incoming Flame Knight. At this point, Shaft sees some kind of value in the armory for me, so he decides to pop it at that point, and Imp comes back out for some more value. Gonna go ahead and set a trap, and the Hunter in the back, which will get him some beasts, which I think is fine. Pass it back to us, and unfortunately, here's where Contraband's a pain in the ass. Cancel Magic negates the incoming blaze that we had, which would have been a entire board clear, and at that point I'm not feeling too good about it. Pass back, the Hunter takes out the Peasant, all of his forces move in, and at this point this is where I wish I had the Mana Cannon. Strange Magician coming out here, Merchant's Favor gaining some treasure for him, into the Owlbear, which I think was just brutal. Training as well, but training won't come really until later on, so I figured why not. At this point I have to go for the Dragon's Fire to pop the Owlbear. Leaving that thing alive is too valuable. Go for the Veil Acolyte at this point because we already lost one Veil. We really just have this as our combo. Goes for the Imp, taking out the Acolyte here alongside the Hunter. Do get the Imperial Guard though, so Furnace Knight not actually able to kill this guard, which I think was very lucky on our part. And meanwhile, Shaft continuing to throw the pressure in our face. Dwarven Blacksmith and Behemothra are two very strong cards. Well, Mothra pulling out what could be a very game-determining card, and Blacksmith using that dupe in case any items have been contraband. Deadeye comes in to take out the Hunter, but Man the Cannons is brutal. Man the Cannons, if you know, like I said, if you're not running it, then having a problem, which I might be in this particular game. At this point, I go for the Frost Giant to freeze off the Behemothra, hold things in place so that way both Captain and Mothra don't deal damage to me in the next turn, because we are looking very low here. You see the Flamestorm using to clear off the Peasant. 7 damage left on my castle. Goes for a Wizard on his end to get some more spells, which I fear are burns. Manticore comes in to provide some guardianship to our castle, which we know at this point is pretty important. Drain life the Harker away as well, getting some life back on the castle thanks to the incoming smuggling ring. Man the Cannons Part 2 happens, and I'm not exactly happy. Firestorm as well, clearing out the Mana Core, and Wizard and Blacksmith both free to hit my face. At this point, my life is getting low, and I am concerned. This deck does carry what seemingly is a lot of burns, so goes for the Parrot play here, which I thought was odd. I don't think any Last Will has been triggered up until that point, but if you got some value out of it, go for it. Soul Steal against the Wizard off of the Imp pull to defend against the incoming Parrot. Mystic Panda as well, just providing more guardianship. Cancel Magic throwing down as well to avoid burns, and we pass it back. He goes for the Headmaster play here, which is a nice little way to, I guess, re-trigger the Firestorm, although didn't really need to, but at this point I think he's just really focused on how can I destroy my opponent, please. At that point we go for the combo of Berserk and Chain Lightning Vilaroth from the Contraband. Able to clean up the incoming assault here. Dark Mirror, of course, halted by Cancel Magic, which I think was a fantastic pull, but Dark Mirror had to have been duplicated, so we see it again happen thanks to that Blacksmith earlier. Thankfully here, the Peasant and the Imp interacted before the Vilaroth got any value, so we were still alive, and at this point, it's very, very bad for him. Another 8 damage thanks to the Vilaroth attack. Dragon's Fire coming in, dealing that additional damage, thankfully not all landing on my castle. Shark coming in to block for the Panda. Does get the Panda kill, but we do have that Ramrus thanks to his Hunter from earlier, putting a beast in our deck. Ramrus comes in, pops the incoming Shark. We go ahead, put the Peasant Acolyte on board, and pass, losing the Panda Guardianship just in case. Goes for a Document Forgery here because he believes that he might be able to steal my Last Will off of me, but he is mistaken, and that is the game. So a couple things to note from that game. One, Contraband, it's fantastic, and it's kind of why you need it here as a secondary win con in case things go south. We saw the Acolyte was a little messy in that game, so realistically Vilaroth was our backup option, which turned out to be quite useful. Cleared out the board, did some big damage, and got us in close enough to deal lethal damage. So I'd say it's very well done there. And secondly, Last Will does not transfer, if that makes sense here. So in case you ever want to have a matchup where you're running against Last Will and you have, Parrot that you've stolen, thinking that maybe you can take someone's Last Will from like a giant or something, unfortunately do not. It will, of course, well, in this case more so document forgery, I should say, because Parrot can't actually take your opponent's Last Will. When playing document forgery, it will just straight up copy the ability for the respective owner of the card. So i.e. my giant will produce units for me, giant from my opponent will produce units for them. So it's a bit of a back and forth here, with knowing what is yours and what will you get if you play document forgery. But just make a mental note of that, so that way you're not facing down 3 more units that like Shaft was here. But overall, a fantastic set of games here to really demonstrate why I love this deck and what I was looking to do with it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed too. This was again one of my, I think, better decks that I made in CNC2 so far, so I'm happy to see where this can go further. And let's go ahead and move on to close this video here, because I don't know if you can tell, I am getting a little bit tired. So let's go ahead and do it. Alright folks, with that being said, that wraps up the Acco spawner and deck list, the Acolyte spawner deck list, if you will. And yeah, quite a fun deck, and hopefully we'll be working on it more in the upcoming future with the, again, potential for balance patch change coming soon. I hope things aren't too thrown off for this deck, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see indeed. But regardless, if you did enjoy the video, be sure to let me know, leave a like, be sure to leave your feedback down below. Well, subscribe if you're new or haven't done so already. It helps the channel a lot by supporting the content here on the YouTube platform. Let me know what you want to see more of in terms of content as well, whether it's more deck lists or the other things. Again, I am trying to work with some other ideas, but I've just not been getting around to them. But that's life. That's life. Life gets busy. Hopefully, though, more to come, and more will be coming for CNC2 for sure. So stick around and stay tuned for that. But with that being said, folks, that's going to be it for me for now. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care. Until next time, stay gaming.